I know there's a lot of people on the meeting today. And Kathy, do we, I know we kind of do and then we don't, but should we go around and introduce ourselves? There seem to be some names here I don't recognize.
I think it's a great idea to go around and introduce ourselves. So do you want to start with the board, Lisa, and then move to the department staff? And then I think we have at least one external guest whose name I recognize, but I expected
Sure.
them.
That's great. Okay, yeah, I'm Lisa Barron, the chair of the board, and I'll pass it on to Adrienne.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adrienne Katz, and I work for the Land Use Review Board, but I worked for the St. Johnsbury Athenaeum, and I still have connections to libraries through friends groups and occasionally substituting in school libraries. So let's see, let's pass on the torch to Tom.
Tom Frank here from Milton, a past chair. And when the governor appoints it, I will no longer be a board member. This is my third meeting I've attended that no replacement has been, I guess one has been found, but not appointed and Kathy can talk about that later.
Jennifer Fells from North Bennington.
I'm Linda Sarnioki. I'm on the board of the library in Weston.
James, it looks like James is here. I guess we can move on if his volume isn't working. Oh, yeah, James.
Are you
Can't hear
muted,
you,
James?
Well, I don't know if there's something going on with your volume, James, but we're unable to hear you. But James Saunders is also a member of the board here. I think that's all the board members. Is it Kathy? I think so.
I think that is everyone. So my name is Catherine Delnau. I'm the state librarian and the commissioner of the Department of Libraries, and I serve as secretary to the board. And I'm going to call on our intrepid note taker next. So Jess.
Hi, I am Jess Leal. I am the executive staff assistant here at the Department of Libraries and note taker. So I don't know who wants to go next. Jeanette?
Hi, Jeanette Schaefer. I'm the assistant state librarian for library advancement.
We should be seeing Tom joining us. He's in a classification meeting this morning. Let me see who's next. Let's call on Josh because he's here in the admin wing with us.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Muse, and I'm the consultant for library technology.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you.
Karen?
Good morning, Karen Gravland. I'm director of the Able Library and consultant for inclusive services.
Let's say hi to Joy next.
Good morning, I'm Joy Warland. I'm the consultant for continuing education and small and rural libraries.
And Jonathan?
Good morning, I'm Jonathan Clark. I am the consultant, the library consultant for youth services, the Department of Libraries.
Thanks. I think Lauren is here too.
Hello. Yes, I'm Lauren Kelly. I'm the technical services consultant here at the Department of Libraries.
Morning. And I think the last staff member who's on the call right now is Carolyn Mark.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Mark. I'm the Interlibrary Loan and Government Services Librarian with the department.
Great, so that's everybody from the department, and I recognize a name of a member of the public who's here with us this morning. Luca Joffrey, do you want to unmute and say hello?
Hi, everyone. I'm a student at the University of Vermont in the Masters of Public Administration program, and I'm just here doing an observation for class. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Luca.
And I think I heard James' very, very distant voice that said something hello or whatever. I think his volume was just down or he's not close enough to the bike or something.
James, can you hear us?
Can y'all hear me?
We can barely hear you, but hello.
Hello. Hello. This is Dave Thomas. I work at Barrett City Elementary Middle School and I live in Plainfield. Y'all hear that?
Well, I can't really hear you at all, James, but if you want to put something in the chat, we can read it. Okay then,
Hello, can you hear me now?
yeah, it's a little better.
How about now?
Ah, yes, perfect.
It was just turned down. Thank you. All right.
Awesome. Oh, that's good.
Now we're back. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask what Luca Joffrey's research is or what the project is? What you're hoping to get out of observing the Board of Libraries?
Yeah, so I'm doing an organizational capacity assessment of an organization of my choosing. So I've identified the Department of Libraries as an interest to me. And so I've done an interview with Catherine a week or two ago, and I do an observation at a board meeting like this, and then just do some other general research that culminates in a final project.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I think the next topic is changes to the agenda. Do we have any changes?
I do not have any changes to the agenda, but I wanted to add an item of regional plans.
Regional plans, okay. I guess I'm not, what, when we add something to the agenda, where do we put it? Just the next thing or?
You can put it wherever the board wants to put it. In this case, I'd recommend putting it between the budget update of the department and closing an adjournment. But you are all welcome to put it where you like. But that, just procedurally, I think that addition of an item is a change to the agenda. Not that it matters too much, but.
Okay, well, that's helpful advice, and I guess we'll do that then. We'll put it after the budget update.
Okay.
On the agenda. Okay. Anything else? All right. Okay, so moving on to item 3, public comment. Do we have any public comment today? Okay. All right. Then item 4 is the approval of the minutes for July 22nd, 2025. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about those. I always get the order mixed up. So as a side note, do we go to asking for approval and then comments and then the vote? Is that? So I would like to see if anybody has a motion to approve.
I'll make the
I
motion.
move, this is Tom.
Jennifer.
Okay.
Okay, Jennifer motions to approve. And do we have a second?
And I'll second it, Tom.
Tom, okay. And is there any comment?
Additions or corrections? That's usually what I always
Is that
say.
it? Okay, that's helpful verbiage, Tom.
Yeah.
Additions or corrections.
Yes, my name. I was in Huntington too.
Okay, yeah.
When it said everybody reported, it said board member but there was no name after it.
Okay.
You had me at the Richmond one. I was there, but I went from Waterbury to Huntington, and then Richmond. So I was at Huntington too.
Oh, right. I do see it actually. It says Vice Chair Adrian Katz, board member, and then starting on page 2, it says Tom Frank, and then State Librarian Catherine Del Neo. So I do see that.
That's why it's switched between.
Yeah.
So when I'm reading it with voiceover, the speech reader, where is it? It's okay. When it switched over to the next page. Okay.
Well, you were included, Tom.
Okay. Yes.
I was going to comment that the Huntington tour and the Richmond tour both referred to the chair as Jennifer Fells, and it should be me. And then I was trying to think if Jennifer, I can't even, it was kind of a blur that day. Did you go to Huntington and Richmond, or did you leave after Waterbury?
I left after Waterbury.
Okay. I was thinking so. Okay. So
I'm sorry, Lisa. I don't know how this swappage of your names has occurred. So we'll fix it. That can be easily fixed.
Of course, of course. And teeniest point of that when we temporarily adjourned, it said that I adjourned it at 11:47, but it spelled my name wrong. So
I don't know.
Also in that section about 11:47, earlier in the minutes at the top, it says 11:46. So it says Department of Libraries minutes of special meeting drafts, July 22, 2025, then 10 a.m. to 11:46. And then immediately after there's like capitalization of conducted. So if we're already in that area.
Can you, Adrian, you're moving fast and I'm still writing. So can you tell me which of the pages you're on and where? I'm sorry, I'm so lost. I was making sure that I wrote 2 R's in Lisa's name.
Yeah, very important. It's that's most important.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. So where is it?
So there are 2 different locations. One's ends, they end a minute apart, and I'm wondering for consistency that there is the accurate time. So at the top of the minutes, there is 11:46.
Okay.
Maybe looking at the minutes, sharing a screen would help too.
No, it's okay. I see where you're talking about. I've got the 2 11:47s and we'll confirm which it was. I think what's challenging is that it's like we're looking at a running time that doesn't have a timestamp on it. So that's, I'm sure, how that confusion happened. And then where were you saying that there's a capitalized word that shouldn't be capitalized?
At the top, it says meeting conducted in person at the Waterbury Public Library.
Oh, the C should be lowercase. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's super minor. There is the next sentence after that. It says the Board of Libraries members in attendance. So you have position titles in parentheses. I'm wondering if there's another way to express that, like Linda was remote, but it's not really her title, or just for consistency. I mean, maybe remote is a position, but you want to reflect that. But I mean, that's up to the.
Yeah, maybe we'll just drop the remote since Linda was present and that is sufficient. We don't, with a hybrid meeting, you don't have to call out each place. So we can just drop the word remote so that it's easier to, if that's okay for folks. Does that sound reasonable?
Is there any
Linda
reason
nodded,
why?
which is all
I'm perfectly fine not to have my next career be remote.
Yeah, I don't think we usually keep track of who's remote and who's not. I mean, everybody that's here is attending the meeting and taking part.
Okay, so just to recap, Jess and I will look back and see, did the meeting end at 11:46 or 11:47? We'll align those 2 locations, the first in the header and the second on the 3rd page. We will clean up confusion about Jennifer and Lisa, that Lisa was there at the Richmond and the Huntington, and that Lisa's name is spelled with 2 R's, Barron, Barron.
Yeah.
And we will change the uppercase C at the top of the first page to a lowercase c in conducted. Those are the notes that I've made, and I think Jess is doing them as well. And Linda's got something to say too, to add to
I'm
that.
sorry, another very minor.
Please don't be sorry. This is great. Meticulous corrections are, we're librarians over here. We love this kind of thing.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it.
We're missing a
So-
semicolon or no?
Under temporary adjournment, which is page 2, I think. Middle of the page, Tom Frank made a motion.
Oh. Yeah, I see there's a lack of a space there, so we'll add a space.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you. This all increases the look of professionality that we have, so professionalism, I think is an actual word, so thank you.
Along that same lines with the tours, all the information's there about who attended, but I wonder if there's like a way, like a bullet list or something visually that's a little easier to digest. It's a little harder. I mean, it's okay, but potential way to make it clearer when someone's looking at this in the future.
I think that the reason we shied away from that is because the minutes become very long with the
Yeah.
bulleted lists. So my preference would just be to leave it the way that it is. Just that's
sorry.
okay.
The minutes being too long.
Yeah, I mean, when we
Like
list
for
the board
paper-wise?
members in attendance, we list them just not in a bulleted list, just all one after another.
I think I'm talking about specifically the site visits, the tours, those paragraphs. Or maybe it could be, I don't know. All the information is there. It's fine. There might be a way to express the same thing in a way that's a little bit easier to digest. That's not a requirement, but that's what when I read the minutes, that's what my experience.
Do other board members want to share their thoughts on whether we should make that change in that section?
I personally don't think it matters. I think the information is there, and
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, I think it could look different, you know, and maybe be more digestible, like Adrian said, but I don't have any problem with what we have here, you know, like she said. But when I was just reading it, I noticed that the tours each say that no members of the public participated, but we use different verbiage for each one, well, for 2 of them. The first one says no members of the public participated in Waterbury, and then in Huntington it said no members of the public were present, and then in Richmond it says no members of the public participated. And maybe that's a little nitpicky, but I agree with you about the professionalism and maybe just to use the same verbiage.
My recollection of the tour is that in Huntington, there were literally no members of the public present. And in the other 2 libraries, that members of the public were using the library, but they did not walk around with us. So we
That's a good
had
one.
chosen to be specific so that people understood that like there were folks in the library or not. But happy to change it, but that's why there was that distinction.
That makes
of the 2.
sense.
Yeah.
And I want to say one comment to our guest there, since she's doing your evaluation. I have said from the very beginning, Kathy is a great bureaucrat because she makes sure that everything is done correctly and accurately. And calling her a bureaucrat is a compliment as far as I'm concerned. She does it very, very well. So this is just an example of that.
I'm now showing a pin and I will describe it. It says number 1 bureaucrat. And I believe that Jonathan Clark, our youth services consultant, broke out the pin making machine to make this for me one day after Tom made a comment, a similar comment. And I'm wearing my fairy tale festival queen outfit in the pin. And that actually ties in very nicely with what you'll see in the department's report. I again wore that same dress to the fairy tale festival this year.
Nice.
So
Nice
thank you, Tom,
Tom.
for the I take bureaucracy as to be a bureaucrat as a compliment. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I strive to be the #1 bureaucrat, but I
The number I'm very-
clearly have been on the road a lot this month and I'm scrambling a little. So thank you for the comments on the minutes, and we will make.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I have one more.
Okay.
Kathy, if that's the distinction you're trying to make, no members of the public participated versus no members of the public were present. As I'm just reading through these, I just think it's a different verbiage and doesn't really indicate anything special. But so I think you need to say no members of the public participated, though there were patrons in the library.
Yes, I like that, or something like that. I was
Yeah,
gonna say the same thing, like, there were no members of the public that were present, who participated in the meeting, but I like what you said even better, Linda. That would make distinction, because if we're taking such care to write that distinction, explaining it a little bit more makes it seem intentional then it looks maybe inconsistent. So that's great. Good feedback.
So let me take Linda's suggestion and also suggest something for the Huntington visit. So what we'll do is say for Richmond and Waterbury, no members of the public participated, although there were patrons in the library.
Mm-hmm.
We could actually flip those two clauses. Although there were patrons in the library, no members of the public participated. So we'll say that for both Richmond and Waterbury. And then for the Huntington tour, we'll say no members of the public were present during the tour or during the visit.
In the library. Whatever. Yep, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. And I was just reminded by Jeanette that part of what happened here was that our fearless note taker was not present. And so she was going on notes that others in the group passed to her. So I want to make sure everybody knows that Jess was not there that day, that there was an emergency that had came up and she wasn't able to join us. So none of this is Jess's fault, and all of this probably falls on me and Jeanette and maybe some others. Jeanette has apologized to me, so I'm just passing that on because we were kind of passing communications through text message for the tour part of things. That wasn't videoed. Thank you all for helping to fix these.
Okay, I think that so now we vote to approve the minutes with the edits. So if who's all in favor? Say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any aye? Okay. Any opposed? Okay, then the motion passes. Thank you. Okay. All right, so we'll move on to item 5, the state librarian report. Kathy.
Thank you. And I want to draw your attention to the document in the chat. I've put a link there. It just appeared this morning, and I apologize that it wasn't there sooner. We have been, as you'll see as I go through the report, we've been run a little bit ragged with library visits, Capital for a Day activity, and our budget is due this morning. So I was really envious to hear about a colleague in another sphere who has board meetings in February and then it's like they're just on a different cycle. So they don't meet as they're closing the budget in July. They meet in August. They don't meet the day the budget is due. They meet in November. So it's something maybe we could think about for the future, shifting our quarterly meetings a little, because I'm realizing this year we've struggled sometimes to get you what you need because we're meeting other deadlines with half-year reporting and year-end reporting. Okay, so let me review, since none of you had the benefit of this report in advance, I will go through it in a little bit more detail today. So in the topic, under the topic of department business, we gathered for our annual statistics meeting on the 28th of July. We like to call that the bean counting meeting. And this year we actually did something kind of fun, I thought, which was I brought some beans in a jar and we had we had beans to guess. And in our team, Linda Willis Pendo was very, very close, but without going over to the actual bean count. But at that meeting, what we do every year is we look at the metrics that we established for our goals for the prior fiscal year that just closed, and we evaluate how close did we get to those? Did we achieve our objectives? Did we not achieve our objectives? And what might we do to achieve anything that kind of was an overreach for us in goal setting? And then we set goals for the subsequent year. So that's a really great opportunity for us to refocus on our strategic priorities and to refocus on statute. And that's one way that we really kind of use the resources we have in a focused way to support the department's objectives throughout the year. And we met many of our goals, and we were able to identify targets for the coming year. And one thing that we did when we were meeting was to hone in on what our core statutory functions are. And what we decided was that interlibrary loan, our continuing education or workforce, we've decided to kind of relabel it a little bit when we're talking with external folks, that it's really library workforce development. That's what the point of our continuing education is. Our shared online collections, which include the Vermont online databases and the Palace Project app and the Able Library. Those are really the top 4 things that we do. Now we do many other things, and some of those are required and some of them are things that we are empowered to do, but not obliged to do. But those are sort of the core services that a lot of our efforts are focused on. Usually in the past, we've kind of combined our bean count and our staff appreciation, and the staff asked me to appreciate them at a different time, not on the statistics day. So we set up a separate staff appreciation day a couple of weeks later, and staff expressed a lot of interest in getting out into the community in Barrie and visiting the Hope Cemetery. We had a really great tour of the Hope Cemetery and all of the amazing monuments that are there. And we had a local historian, Dan Barlow, who I think Josh set us up with him, and he toured us around and explained what we were looking at in the different eras and the different monuments. It was really great. And it was a super warm day, and we sat outside and ate pizza together from Pearl Street Pizza, which is a local pizza place here in Barrie. And we thought about playing games, but we decided we were too hot. And then we called it a day. And I'm noticing that there's a typo in the spelling of Barrie in that paragraph, so we'll clean that up. A key thing we did in September was to deliver books to the 6 correctional facilities around the state. And I want to give a big thank you to Karen Gravlin, who selected books, and to Vance Aslan, who delivered those books. Vance is in the info and access team, and he has a CDL license and he loves driving around. So we had him enlisted in this activity, and providing the materials to the state correctional facilities is part of our statutory obligations and is a really important thing that we try to do every year in the late summer, early fall. We had a rare meeting with our program officer from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. So every 5 years, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, or INLS, conducts a site visit. Typically, that means they literally visit the site. So they typically come to the state of Vermont and sit with us in a room or a series of rooms for multiple days. And then we take them on the road and we show them those federal dollars at work in libraries around the state. But due to some of the challenges in funding at IMLS and some of the changes that are going on in the federal government, they pivoted to an online visit, and it was greatly reduced. And it was sort of winnowed down to a couple of hours on one day. And we were led in our preparation efforts by Jeanette Schaefer, and I need to give I want everyone to give a huge thank you to Jeanette for the hard work that she did getting all of these materials ready. Jeanette didn't just get them ready this year. Jeanette got them ready for our first visit, which was planned for the same week that the floods happened in 2023. And then when they canceled that because the state was in this emergency situation, we rescheduled it for July 2024, the same week, and got rained out again. And wherever we set up to visit, that's where the floods hit. And it was really a challenge. And so Jeanette had 3 years of data that she collected for one site visit. So she just kept kind of updating the documents and working with everyone to get that organized. Jeanette's efforts were noticed by Madison Bowles, our program officer, and she wrote an email documenting her visit and her findings and said that she appreciated the time you and your staff dedicated to meeting with me, as well as for the efforts Jeanette Schaefer made in expertly gathering the site visit checklist information together. It was a comprehensive checklist overview that provided helpful context. Madison Bowles also stated that overall, the LSTA program is well organized and well run. The administrative and financial processes are in order, and certain elements, like the continuing education resources you provide library staff, could serve as a model for other states. I commend you and your staff for the attention to federal funding requirements and best practices. I have no recommendations at this time. So we were really pleased with the outcome of the visit, and that they didn't have any improvements to share with us. It's important to stress this isn't an audit, but if they did find things that we could improve, they would have let us know about them during the visit. And so we felt really relieved that it went so well after all of our anticipation of the visit over multiple years and all of the planning that went into it. So that won't happen again for another 5 years likely. So yeah, it was nice to have that, to see that. It is nice to see that in our rear view mirror and to have received such good feedback. Speaking of rear view mirrors, I feel like I need one all the time now. If you check out the next section, you'll see all of the outreach that we've been doing, a lot of it with me driving around the state with a car full of folks doing state capitol trivia, but there's also outreach that individuals in our team have done. So I'll just give you a quick update on that. I was invited up to the Grand Isle Free Library back at the end of July to provide their board and planning commission chair with feedback on their library design. Then on the 29th of July, library staff, including me, it was really just me, Jeanette Schaefer, and Jonathan Clark, we hit the road and we went down to Brandon, the Proctor Free Library, the McClure Library in Pittsford, and Castleton Free Public Libraries. And that was a really fun trip. We were able to do the final site visit for the Brandon project because they completed their renovation, and that's a step that we take at the end of each of the completed projects. There were a lot of questions on that tour about the budget, and people were asking about potential impacts to their local libraries. So I answered those questions, and we'll get into that topic probably in the next agenda item. On the 6th of August, Josh Muse and Carolyn Mark, two of our library consultants, did outreach to the Vermont Association of Business, Industry, and Rehabilitation, and they taught people how to access and use the Vermont Online Library free resources. And They particularly focused on Udemy and Peterson's test and career prep. Then on the 12th of August, it was time for Windham County Capital for a Day, and that's one of Governor Scott's initiatives where he brings the cabinet and the extended cabinet, including me and staff from the Department of Libraries, out on the road so that people don't have to people in other counties don't have to come to Washington County and come to Montpelier to interact with his administration. We visited, let's see, Brooks Memorial Library in Brattleboro, Vernon Free, Guilford Free, and the Lydia Taft Pratt Library in West Dummerston. And Jonathan Clark joined me on that tour, as well as Joy Warland, it's just really fun to get in the car and drive around, and I have to keep drinking coffee to make it back safely. That was a great trip. Let's see. Then Karen Gravlin presented at a peer-assisted learning and support meeting in Barrie that was hosted by VABVI, which is the Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired. That presentation took place on the 10th of September, and she shared information about the Able Library and about the new talking book player that the National Library Service is launching, and which we hope we're going to receive some of these so that we can distribute them out to Vermonters this fall. Karen also highlighted that we have a monthly Able Library book club and told people how to access materials. On the 10th of September, I visited the Judavin Memorial Library, which has also completed its capital improvements project. Judavin is up in Hardwick, and I was there with Mark McClary and Hannah Blair. If you haven't had a chance to visit yet, they've basically doubled their size, and they have a great new children's space and a meeting room for the public. So it's a really nice one. On the 23rd of, I skipped something. Let's see, I think it was the 20th of September. That's when I was the queen of the fairy tale kingdom. If you can believe, they keep asking me back. And Lily Talbert joined me. And Lily was the fairy godmother. She found a great fairy godmother costume. And we learned that little kids would rather be turned into a knight or a fair maiden or a phoenix or whatever. They'd rather be bibbity bobbity booed with a wand than to have a large metal sword come toward their heads. Go figure. On the 23rd of September, I visited some libraries in Addison County, and I was joined by Jeanette Schaefer and by Mark McClary and Hannah Blair, who work on the capital projects. We visited the Orwell Free Library, and there were adorable kindergartners there for story time in the rain. It was really a treat to see them. And then we went to the Salisbury Free Public Library and the Lawrence Memorial Library in Bristol. And both Salisbury and Lawrence Memorial are subrecipients of the Capital Project's Treasury grants. So it was great to connect with them and to see how they're doing and are they on track and, kind of what's coming for them next. And we actually just learned, I think yesterday, that Salisbury received another grant because they had a little bit of a gap that was emerging as costs of construction have increased. That wasn't a grant from the department, but I was certainly happy to see that they had gotten another pot of funding to help achieve their goals.
Kathy, do you know where that was from?
I can't remember right now, but I bet that Jeanette or Jess can pop something in the chat thread.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I'll put it in.
Thanks, Jeanette. And then on the 25th of September, we were off again for Capital for a day, and we went up to Grand Isle. I feel like I've gone to Grand Isle a lot this year, but we went to the Apple Island Resort for the cabinet meeting, and Mark McClary came with me and got to put faces to names of people he's emailed with around the state in his work for many years in grants. And then Hannah Blair and Mark and I visited the Grand Isle Library, and then we visited the Worthern Library in South Hero. And then on the 2nd of October, which now it's 2 weeks ago, I guess. Jonathan Clark was hosting the Orleans and Essex County directors at the Leach Library, and that's in Irisburg. And he invited us up there. Leach Library is one of our subrecipients also. So Hannah and Mark and I hit the road together and with Jonathan, and we visited Leach. We were there for the meeting and then took a tour of the library. And then we went over to the Groton Library, which is another subrecipient. So we have been really making a point of getting out and visiting the subrecipient libraries. Many of them are still in their before stages and will be starting construction this fall. And then as other libraries are finishing up, we are also visiting them at that point. And if they have any concerns that come up, we are meeting with them either online or sometimes if they have a reason that they want us to be out there, we're making our way to them. Jeanette put in the chat thread that the additional funding in Salisbury came from a block grant from the governor and the Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development, and that the award was for $150,000. Moving on into that workforce development space, this is something we've always been calling continuing education, but it struck us at our statistical meeting that people don't really understand what that means, and that we don't always even think of the work we're doing in the workforce development space. But when you consider that we're helping to elevate the learning and skills of public library staff throughout the state and trustees throughout the state, there's really a workforce development aspect to it. Carolyn Mark, who's our interlibrary loan and government services consultant, taught a 5-session reference and information services class in July and early August. And that's one of the core courses within the department's Certificate of Public Librarianship program. Josh Muse, our library technology consultant, held the first session of a new roundtable, which is the Library Technology and Statistics Roundtable. He held that in July, and 10 people attended, and we expect that will continue to be something people are interested in because it's a way for kind of a peer group to discuss issues that they're addressing. Sometimes a roundtable might have a focused topic for discussion, but oftentimes we're just kind of talking about whatever the participants bring to the group and do some troubleshooting and information sharing and problem solving. The technology roundtable, the conversation included writing reports in Koha and structured query language, managing and purchasing computers in this post Windows 10 support period, which is something that lots of libraries have been talking about, printer and service contracts, which is something that's always top of mind for folks, and what to do when your library emails and newsletters have been misidentified as spam. So it's a broad range of conversations. Not to be outdone by the others hosting roundtables, Carolyn Mark also hosted a quarterly roundtable meeting in August, and that one was hosted in person at the Department of Libraries and was attended by 15 staff from around the state. And they talked about interlibrary loan workflow and successes of the program, but also areas for improvement and best practices. And then those who attended were able to tour the department's stacks in the Able Library. And I am sure that there were other roundtables that were held, so I just want to mention that there are roundtables going on all the time. So these are the ones that were reported to me for my weekly reports, so I was able to easily report them to you. So if somebody on this call didn't see mention of their roundtable, don't forget to report it to me, because then I share the news of your excellent work with the board. Karen was involved in a podcast. And this again was VABVI, the Vermont Association for Blind and Visually Impaired. The podcast promoted Able Library Service promoted library service to the listeners, and the podcast is called I See What You Hear, and that was the August 13th podcast. And Joy Warland went down to Rhode Island with me in kind of mid-August, I went to a meeting of state librarians from the Northeast, and Joy went to the 2025 Continuing Education Forum, which is an annual event that provides professional development and networking opportunities for people in Joy's role at other state libraries. And there were 27 attendees, and Joy was one of the planning committee members and also delivered a presentation, Stronger Together, a regional approach to sustainable professional development. And Joy also presented an update about the successes of a new cohort pilot program that we have launched for those who are enrolled in the Certificate of Public Librarianship. And Joy has let us know in the chat, thank you, Joy, that she hosted the Small and Rural Libraries Roundtable on the 26th of September. Lauren Kelly taught an advanced cataloging course in August that was attended by 27 staff members from 21 public libraries. And Lauren teaches a cataloging core course, but this was really an advanced course that built on that foundation in the core course. And it's really just so important that cataloging be done well so that people can access the materials that libraries purchase for them. And Lauren brings a lot of enthusiasm to mark records. So it's always kind of, cataloging is a topic that I think you have to be a librarian or a logician to love. And so it's great to see folks attending that. And Joy Worland, who heads up our continuing education and small and rural libraries work, she led an online training that was a mid-year training and check-in for library trustees at the beginning of September. So this is not a comprehensive list of activities. There's a lot more going on, but as I was gathering information for the report, I realized just how busy folks have been. A quick update about the Treasury capital projects. We have now distributed more than $3.8 million to subrecipients. So that's about 23% of the total 16.4 million award that we received from Treasury. 11 of the 14 public libraries have submitted invoices for reimbursement. And when we went out to some of the others that haven't submitted yet, they said that they're about to submit reimbursement. And it's important to note that this program has not been negatively impacted at this point by the federal government shutdown, that it's a reimbursement program, which means that the state pays people and then we get reimbursed by the feds. So we're still paying the subrecipients and we're still requesting funds. The shutdown is likely impacting the state's ability to receive the reimbursements, but at this point, there's not any impact to folks who are our subrecipients, the public libraries. There was a story on WCAX about the Middletown Springs Library relocation, which is something that we're supporting with Treasury. And I put a link to that story in the chat. It's going to be a great thing to see them move just a couple of buildings away to a much larger church from the little church that they're in. And Brandon Public Library and Judavine Memorial and Hardwick have both completed their funds and received their base and their contingency awards. I think that the Wilder Library is hot on their heels, so should be getting paid out soon, even though their project may not complete yet. So we've got some invoices that we're looking at related to that. And we have gotten some questions about our HUD program. So I just wanted to give you a status update, which is that we are finishing up the application and we've begun working with the vendor that does our online web applications to build the actual application. We do still plan to launch that HUD application in the fall. Joy generously reminded me that the fall lasts until the winter solstice. So when you wonder when is the fall, that is literally when the fall is. So we plan to have more information about the exact date of the launch by the time that we convene directors for the Directors Summit in early November. But likely we'll get that all built out on the web, and then we'll have probably a 2-month period for applications that's coming. We expect it'll be the end of November through the end of January. And that program is different from the Treasury program. It has a different focus and a different scope. And we plan to award grants in the range of 100,000 to 400,000. And those grants are really focused on the completion of essential maintenance and repairs of existing public library buildings, rather than sort of the broader scope with the Treasury program. So we will likely not see any buildings moving or expanding, but working on ADA improvements and necessary improvements so that buildings stay standing. We right now are in the midst of collecting applications for our Courier Grant program. The period to apply began on the 24th of September, and I believe it will run through the 31st of this month. Happy Halloween. We anticipate awarding libraries that apply and are eligible $683.80, and that is half the cost of one courier stop per week for a year. Last year, we awarded 116 grants, and we're hoping to have that similar number for this year. This grant is 100% funded with our federal funds. We had talked last time we met about the idea that the department would combine the Courier and the summer reading grant, but unfortunately, our funding for the summer reading grants isn't quite in place at this time. The summer reading grants for 2026, we are asking for money through the Budget Adjustment Act, because the Elva Smith Trust did not perform very well last year. And so usually we spend about $40,000 to $50,000 of Elva Smith funds on those to support those grants of $250 to $350. But this year, if we did that, we would completely drain the Elva Smith Fund. So we've asked for support through the Budget Adjustment Act. So we'll see if we receive that support. We won't know about that until the legislature's back in session. So it may delay the start of the grant application period. And the final thing I wanted to share with you is just that the National Public Library Survey shows that public library usage is increasing. So, sometimes people will say strange things to me at parties, or you meet a friend and they say, "Are people still using the library?" It's like, oh, for goodness sake, yes, they are. And we do a lot of work, and particularly Josh Muse does a lot of work to gather data from libraries around the state so that we can kind of gather that information and report it as a data set to the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And last year, that data set from Vermont included 166 of the 186 public libraries in the state. And so what happens with that is they tabulate all of the data and then they issue some information, and it's really in depth, and there are many, many tables. And so we're still looking through it to see what is most relevant to us. But the data always lags by a little bit. So the 2025 release is actually the 2023 data. But what we saw is that libraries remain trusted and heavily used community institutions, and nearly half the country's population is registered at their local public libraries. And that libraries have really been rebounding very well following the COVID-19 public health emergency. And in-person visits nearly doubled in 2023 over 2021. And the programming that's being offered in public libraries continues to grow and is really robust. So there's more information in the report that you can read, but I thought that it's a good status check on how important public libraries are to the public, to the people that they serve, and how vitally important it is to continue supporting them and strengthening them. So that is the conclusion of my report. I just talked for a really long time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
That's a wonderful, thorough report with a lot of exciting initiatives.
Yeah,
Thanks,
agreed.
Adrienne. Thanks, Lisa.
It's amazing, like, how much happened since July. I can't even believe it. It sounds like you guys were out straight. I mean, all your roundtables and gathering intel and going to the different libraries. And I have to go see some of those ones that are finished because they sound amazing. So
Yeah.
They really are. The Brandon Library is so improved. It's got this great teen center, and the fun surprise at Brandon is that there's a secret door into it, which it's like a hidden door. I thought that was really perfect for the teen room. And they've made the most of the fact that their building was built with a hole in the middle of it. So it was really an ADA challenge to make it accessible with all of the different levels was really a challenge, but the architects and the library staff worked together and it's just really great. And one of the things at that library that was really cool is that I believe they said that the wood came from local forests and then was made everything was made locally, which is really great. And one thing that we are doing to highlight the awesome improvements being made and possible through this funding is that we're interviewing the directors or others involved in the project afterwards. So we have, and maybe Jeanette, if you could pop into the thread, the link to the newsletter piece. So we have a short blurb in the newsletter, but then there's a longer blurb that Lily and Jeanette work on, and Lily Talbert has kind of sent out the interview questions. And so for each of the projects as they complete, we'll have an interview that highlights the work and things that they're proud of and accomplished. And those are available on through the newsletter, but also we've been posting them on the Capital Projects website for the ARPA Treasury funds.
awesome. I don't know if anybody else has any comments or questions for Kathy about that report.
Are you as tired as I am? Because I'll tell you, like, it feels we've been on the road a lot. One of the library directors sort of asked, are you just doing this to do it? And it's like, no, it actually really helps us and informs us. And then if there's testimony that I am asked to provide, I can really speak to what's going on and what people are reporting in the community. So it's really, this work is important to us, and that's why we're prioritizing. And what we have been doing is to kind of coordinate the team so we go for key events that we would have been there for anyway. So like when Jonathan said he was heading out for the annual in-person meeting of the directors in Orleans and Essex counties, it was like, well, I'll go too. And, you know, the Treasury folks will come, the capital projects folks will come. So we don't waste a lot of money going to the same spot multiple times. So we're trying to consolidate our efforts.
Kathy, I think it's terrific that you're getting out to these libraries. It's wonderful. It must be very interesting for you to see all these different libraries. But it also reminds these libraries, which can sometimes feel isolated and alone, that the state library is there and has amazing resources for them and has an interest in them. So that's I think it's just terrific that you're doing it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Yeah, I've now broken the 100 library visit mark. So I think I'm at 103 public libraries, which is pretty, I don't know. It's funny though, too, because some of them, I keep visiting the same libraries again and again, which is, I like to go and I also want to see new ones each time, but some libraries there will be multiple meetings at. So over time, you know, I've gone out and visited many more than 103, but it's 103 distinct libraries at this point. So
it's
Well,
kind
they
of
must
like,
love it.
yeah, go ahead.
This is also very reaffirming to the libraries and their staff. As you said, the isolation or that, this really gives them a positive feedback on all the work they're doing. They work very
Mm.
hard. So
They
thank
really
you for
do.
doing that. Thank you. It's a
Well,
big effort on your part. You have all the
Mhm.
administrative things and to take time away. I greatly appreciate that.
Well, it's amazing to see what is going on locally. One of the things that really struck me with our visits up to the Northeast Kingdom recently, about 2 weeks ago, was how much they're doing to help with, how much the library is doing to help with food insecurity and other challenges that people are facing in their community. And, you know, the networks that move food through our state are often really reliant upon public library staff members, board members, and volunteers, which is something that I'm interested in learning more about and mapping a little bit. I know that in Groton and in Canaan, these are things that we've heard how far people are traveling to pick up food that's brought from maybe from Barry. And that impacts to public library funding could actually impact other essential kind of key needs that people have. So that's something that was really top of mind, I think, when we visited the Northeast Kingdom recently. You know, and other things that you wouldn't think of a library giving out or distributing, like gun locks. You know, it's like these are things that people need, and there's a place in their community that's bringing folks together. And a lot of the Department of Labor people are, especially in the Northeast Kingdom, I've noticed that they are embedded in the library, so they have regular open office hours in libraries so that they can meet people in the community. So that's an example of state workers kind of getting out in the field and doing work in the community, and that's been going on for years. So that's just really amazing, and it's usually not something that like we set up that partnership. This is something that they notice these libraries and these communities find useful. But as we hear from people, then we can see areas where we could help get involved a little bit more with other state partners.
And
I think
having
it would
lived
be
up there
great,
in
Kat.
Baden, I'm sorry, let me be quiet.
No, you
But
go ahead, Tom. Go
I
ahead.
was after living up there in Baden for 10 years up there in the Northeast Kingdom. Yeah, the attitude a lot of times up there is, yeah, our money goes down to Montpelier. We never see that or them again. So it's just really, and they consider Barry part of Montpelier state government, you know, and it's really good to bring them all together. And it's fantastic that you get up there. They're not forgotten.
That's right. I was going to say too that as libraries strive to be community centers, not just books, it might be really helpful to have a roundtable, and maybe there's already been one, forgive me if there has, but a roundtable about how various libraries are serving their communities in the ways that you just talked about, Kathy, so that other libraries in the state can say, oh, we could do that. That might be a really interesting discussion to have.
Absolutely. And the small and rural libraries roundtable that Joy leads is one of the places where those conversations happen, I
Yep.
think, because they talk about programming and they talk about social services, and it's really an area where there's a lot happening. Oh, and Joy's also mentioning the directors meeting. So we host directors meetings and we participate. Sometimes the counties host their own meeting, but we are invited to come and participate. And sometimes we're the conveners. But it's really helpful to folks who are feeling isolated or who are feeling like they have a problem and they don't know how to solve it, to hear how a colleague has approached it. You know, part of the expertise that the consultants have is really getting the right group of people in the room together. One roundtable that we are going to be adding, and Jeanette Schaefer's taking the lead on this one, is a facilities roundtable. And we are going to have colleagues from the Preservation Trust of Vermont join us for those, at least initially, as we get those launched, because we're just seeing a lot of topics of conversation that come up that people need support with. And So that's something that we're really moving more into that space. We've been in that space with, I mean, the small rural libraries roundtable and the youth services roundtable. They've been around for a long time, but adding to that kind of convening role, I think is a great thing for our consultants to do.
And there may also be connections that the department can make with external groups like the Vermont Library Association, where there's an annual conference where people could share ideas also to other library staff or individuals involved.
Yeah, and I attend the typically monthly meetings of the Vermont Library Association whenever I am able to, and we are pretty active in presenting, sometimes command performances and sometimes things that we ask to present. Sometimes they'll say, we need a presentation on this, and then the department staff will kind of think of how we might be able to do that. So we have been working a lot with VLA and working pretty well with them. I think, we don't have exactly the same perspective or focuses, and they're a little bit more of an advocacy group than the department is. But we really appreciate working with folks in that organization and the Vermont School Library Association whenever we have opportunities.
Oh, well, that was a lot of talking. Yes. We're gonna have you talk a little more. So, I don't want to rush anything, but it sounds like we're winding down on this topic, so we can move on to item 6, the Department of Libraries budget update.
Sure. So I can't give tons of details about the budget because it hasn't been finalized. Our budget is part of the governor's budget, and so probably by the time that we meet in January, but definitely by March, I can share more information about that. But what I can tell you is that as far as general funds goes, and that's our state funding, this year's budget, the 2026 budget, we received $2,371,969 of general funds. And that is coupled with our about $1.4 million of federal funds. In fiscal 27, we do not anticipate that our federal funds will increase, and we are still hopeful that we will receive a fiscal, that we'll receive an allocation from IMLS, Institute of Museum and Library Services, of around the 1.24. Hope I said that right. 1.24 million is our recent allocation. So the governor has asked us to stay within a 3% increase with general funds. So that would put, the 3% increase would put the state funding at about 2.4 million. So we have been working toward that goal. And the challenge for us continues to be that if the cost of everything is increasing over the years and the federal funding is flat and not increasing, then the 3% state funds feel like they're going less far. If that makes any sense. So the 3% increase of about 2/3 of our funding is paired with a flat level for the remaining 1/3 of the federal funding. That said, I would be especially grateful if we received the federal funding. Things had looked promising before the federal government shut down, and I hope that when the federal government reopens, that the elected officials will continue to be on the same trajectory with IMLS funding as they were prior to the shutdown. We had seen that the Institute of Museum and Library Services funding that it was being contemplated at the same amount for the grants to states program that it's currently at, pretty much. Even with a tiny increase in the federal budget, $3 million is, I think, a tiny increase for that. And that funding is through the Labor, Health, and Human Services, Education and Related Agencies bill. So that's the bill we've been watching. And, you know, we'll see what happens when they reopen, but both the Senate and the House appropriations were signaling that they were going to fund IMLS and the Grants to States program through which we get that federal money every year. So very hopeful still. It's a little bit hard to anticipate how that will play out in the end. But we're hopeful that we will receive the federal funding, and we'll let people know if we hear anything else. And we're continuing to spend the federal allocation that we have this year. And we're really mindful that we want to spend it quickly, just to kind of, make sure it's been utilized in case anything else changed over time. But at this point, the federal shutdown doesn't impact our current budget at all. We're not doing anything differently. It's like our treasury program, it's a reimbursement program. So we keep track of what we've spent and then we request reimbursement from IMLS. And typically at this time of year, the federal government is closing one year's books and opening the next year's books. So typically we wouldn't be able to draw down money in this period of time anyway. So hopefully they'll reopen soon and we'll be able to resume our federal draws for the IMLS funds. So that's a quick budget update because I can't share more details until they're confirmed, but that is where we are with our budget plan.
Oh, look forward to more info in January or March or April or whenever. Does anybody have questions about that for Kathy?
No.
All right. So we can move on to the item that was added by Adrian, the regional plan info.
Thank you, everyone. So regional plans, and as a quick note before I discuss that item, I did want to mention that the state librarian's report nicely dovetails into this. There were many items that were brought up in the report, such as the core functions of the library, for example, workforce development, interlibrary loans. Those are items that come up in regional plans, and as well as I heard discussion about specific libraries and also their use of the money from the U.S. Treasury funds. That's something that may be also connected. And lastly, I also heard about the idea about libraries being an anchor in a community. That's another important point that really connects to this topic that I was going to bring up. And also I will bring up that in the Department of Libraries newsletter for this month in October, that interestingly enough, that Carolyn is doing cataloging and brings up a regional plan from the Chittenden County from the 1966 through 1976. And that was an interesting find, where that's a document historically that is the document that is now being created online. And so I thought that was a very interesting timing, coincidental, but that is something, if you can see the newsletter, that also addresses like some of the similar issues that come up in a typical plan that a regional commission would develop. Something on housing, or like I mentioned, workforce development, or even libraries. So I wanted to bring up regional planning because of its connection to libraries, and others may already be aware of, the department may be aware of, or other board members may be hearing that currently, because of Act 181, the Land Use Review Board is tasked with taking in regional plans, also to create maps. So regional plans are part of the process, and there are these written documents, often very lengthy, many pages, and they incorporate many subjects, and they have been discussing libraries, and they have been discussing the goals for libraries. And it's interesting to see that, but also to see what their comments about maintenance in libraries and like thinking about plans, and it may be something that board members, either maybe just on a personal reason we want to get involved with the process, or that's perhaps the department. So what it is, so every regional commission, there are 11 of them across the state, and they're all being staggered to provide applications. It's in stages. The initial stage right now is the pre-application stage. And so there's 2 that are in right now from Rutland's regional planning, regional planning commission, and then also the northeastern. Let me look up so up in where Grand Isle, for example, is, and to hear about that project is so exciting. But I didn't see that reflected. I may have missed it in my cursory review, but like highlighting great projects like that are that would be of interest, and that there were also maybe some opportunities like that the department may or be interested in connecting, seeing these plans. So everything that a regional planning commission is online. It's available anybody, and I'd be happy to show anyone how to find those documents and to review them. And that's a process that's happening right now, and it's interesting to read the documents because they do cite things like the Department of Library statistics, for example. So it's interesting how they're using our data set to inform their planning. And lastly, I will say, as a fun little note that was made in one of the drafts of the plan, is that so the way that libraries could help this process. And so the Regional Planning Commission, they're seeking public input, and they're having multiple events, and they had maybe 18 to 20 events. Well, libraries events of a book sale at the Rutland Free Library brought the second most people to the event, only beat by the Winterfest chili cook-off. So maybe next year have hot food at the library book sale. But anyway, so libraries as a third space and where people are gathering, like that was a place that it was helpful to these commissions developing these plans, get feedback from people who especially maybe wouldn't necessarily go to a meeting that's held online or some other format, that they were meeting people where they were at a place that was held by the library. So that was amazing to see. And so I wanted to put that on the board's awareness that there's this great work that's being done in plans, and then there might be some really great opportunities and things that we can share, perhaps, and how, libraries are an important part of that planning process, either regional or maybe even locally town planning as well.
Yeah, Adrian shared some of that with me too. And I thought it was really interesting how they talked about libraries being like, in the center of town or easily accessible to the patrons. And, I was like, well, I can't really think of libraries that are out in the middle of nowhere, except maybe the one in Huntington, but it's probably in the center of town for there. But it was really interesting information, and I'm gonna look into it a little bit more too. But I don't know, there are opportunities to provide some more input to those plans. I don't know. But maybe Kathy's already aware of that type of thing that's going on.
Well, it's interesting because I'm aware that there are plans, but none of the regional groups have reached out to the department. And it can be challenging, with 11 groups and our regular work, it's challenging to insert ourselves into their activities. So I think really, it's helpful to hear about this. And I think that there's a challenge of how do we remind them that we're relevant? There are kind of two directions that this can go in. It can be a public libraries up or a department down. And I think Tom and Jeanette and I will definitely have things to talk about with relation to this. It can just be difficult to insert yourself or insert something into an already established process, or to have the department showing up at the chili or book sale events and saying, "Oh, you forgot about us." So there's a little bit of there's a little bit of a challenge there. Like, how do we get them to engage with us earlier or at this point in their process so that we can support them? I mean, one thing we can do is to give that group a moment at a director's meeting of a particular county or particular counties, for example, to try to connect each of the planning groups with the county librarians and set up something like that. But if they didn't plan that as part of their strategic planning activities and how they mapped it out, they may or may not have capacity to do that, or they may or may not in a certain town have the need, or in a certain region have the need for that. So I'm imagining they each have their own process.
Yeah. So they might have different processes across the state. Even the reports themselves are written differently, how libraries are itemized and documents. There's two separate things happening. So you were talking, I hear you about the process of like inserting yourself into like what's happening with the regional commission, or like, do we do it from bottom up or top down? Like, I hear that. Also, I wanted to add that these are applications that are being reviewed by the Land Use Review Board, and there are opportunities to comment. There are certain time periods for each, like 30 days, 60 days, state agencies can comment, or members of the public, for example. So that's a different stage of the process as well. So I did want to make you aware of that as well.
Tom?
Hi, everyone. Thank Adrian. That's very thoughtful and informative. I just want to say that over the last, excuse me, 3+ years since Kathy's been here, we have raised the profile of the department. I think Kathy's been leading that charge and getting involved with the Literacy Commission. I think that's the correct name, right? Right, Kathy? Yeah. So, and getting a seat in there where we should have been all along. I think that you raise a really good point about the power of the planning commissions and how they're kind of the de facto county government that you see in other states. Here, there's some powers that are within those planning commissions that would be normally be held at the county level in other states. So, but I do want to point out that both within and outside of state government, our profile has been significantly raised since Kathy has been here. And I just really want to point that out and say, we're in a much better position than we've been, certainly in my time at the department. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, capital for the day, that might have been an opportunity where there might have been a regional planning commission or local planning commissions, or we're also participating in that too. So there might have been discussions and thoughts since.
It's something we can definitely, I appreciate, as I'm saying, it's really helpful to have this brought to our attention and have it be top of mind. And there can be reasons that we wouldn't always provide comments on some aspects of plans, but I think it's an area that we can certainly grow more in. And I'm sure that this isn't the only time that they're doing planning, and these regional plans will be evolving, and so they can often be modified.
Yeah, like pre-application, application, approved or rejected, and then maybe like 5 or 8 years out, I forget the time period, but then have to reapply.
Well, and it might be useful for us to connect with some of the folks and find out how they engage with other departments and what we can do to make sure that we're included in that in future iterations, and if they're interested in our input in this iteration. There's always that kind of tightrope of state and the local municipalities and the regions, and how do you how do we interact with them appropriately so that they know we're here if they need us as a resource? Part of the challenge too is really the limits of our capacity to engage with 11 separate groups. So sometimes it could be useful to convene a larger group. Jeanette just mentioned something in a chat to me, like, well, we could potentially do something about libraries for that audience, for the audience of the planning commissions. Sometimes that can be an effective way to share information without becoming overwhelmed, like invite them to a session.
Yeah, you guys are pretty thinly spread as it is. It would really be kind of impossible to be a presence at every single county and every meeting, and I can imagine that would be hard.
And it's tough because, there's work that's really important to do to strengthen Vermont's libraries, but in statute, that's really written in a very broad way. And these regional planning commissions have evolved and have a charge that may have some overlap with ours, but our role in supporting them isn't really clearly defined. I think we can find a degree of synergy or places where there's overlap in what we want to do to support local libraries. But it's also tricky. The topic of county-wide systems, for example, came up a little bit during the working group. And there are some people who are like, we should be doing that, like others are doing that. It's a huge thing to undertake. And so there's a degree to which we need to be really careful about making suggestions that might push people in a certain direction rather than another direction, and really thinking about that. In the end, that wasn't a recommendation of the working group. And that's something that may be best for that to evolve organically from the bottom up. And we see that happening in some areas with libraries. We're really working together and moving materials between them. And even with things like the home card or that sharing of resources. It's good for us to keep an eye on it, though, Adrian. And I definitely appreciate that you added it to the agenda and shared information. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah, and it's something brand new to us that these applications just came in. And yeah, so I'm getting to know the process as well. And it's a new thing that they're figuring out. And yeah, it might be some things that we could be involved with and other things not. But yeah, it's just interesting, like how people also look at libraries too, and benefits to the community, what's important to them.
James?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I was just wondering, as we're discussing these regional planning commissions and more local organizations, and especially Catherine, since you've visited 103 of these, have you come across any libraries that seem to be really, for want of a better word, downtrodden, operating with simply volunteers, or so small that they couldn't even hold a certain number of books even if they got them, or just don't have the facilities to do some of the, to even be a really adequate town center? Did you run into any kind of libraries like that?
That's a great question, James. I'd say there are definitely libraries like that are struggling. And some of the data that Josh gathers through the public library survey offers a window into that world. For example, we have 186 public libraries, but only 166, I think, have submitted public library survey responses. Those 20 that didn't submit it probably don't have much capacity to do that piece of the work. And a lot of times those are it's not true of everyone. Somebody just may have been overwhelmed one year and not submitted, but oftentimes those 20 that are less engaged with the department, the ones that are not applying for grants from the department, like the summer reading grant, which is non-competitive, that's often a little bit of a flag that they may be so overwhelmed that they're not even going for free money. That to me, that can show that there's a lack of capacity there. I also think that we have questions in the PLS that are helpful for drilling down further into that. So in the public library survey, we have questions about the overall budget, and you'll see some. I was hearing about a library up in the Northeast Kingdom that had a $7,000 operating budget total. That was for staff, books, everything. So when you're looking through the public library survey, among those that do report, you'll see a wide disparity in what their budgets are and what their staffing levels are. And so and you can also see a wide disparity in the number of hours that they're open. So those things will highlight usually that there are some communities that are not funding the library at a level that they can perform the tasks. We know even among libraries that I've visited in the past couple of weeks, I was up in Irisburg at the Orleans Library, and I was surprised that they don't have an online catalog. So we'll run into situations like that sometimes, and there could be reasons that they have decided to not have an online catalog, but in their case, it sounds that way. But I remember a few years ago visiting the Mary J. Blood Library, and they didn't yet have an online catalog, but they wanted one. So looking for those opportunities to support them is something that we're always really doing. But sometimes it can really be a matter of there's just not much of a tax base in certain towns. And so it can be very hard for them to fund the services that would put them on par with others. And that's why those shared services we provide are so important, I think.
Sure.
Like ILO. Yeah, like Kathy, you were speaking about that it's almost like even these regional plans it's not necessarily even to participate in the process, but also use it for information. So I was hearing your expertise in information that was very valuable. I wanted James's question of it was fascinating that did come up in the regional plan, and I misspoke earlier. It was Northwest Regional. Sorry, I got my cardinal maps, but they did mention how there was a library up there, Isle of Mont, I think, that was run solely by volunteers. So that is spelled out, and the department, could flesh that out or use it. Maybe they're important for other ways that are not even participating. So as you were speaking, I was thinking about that. It's maybe even useful for information like how do places view themselves and their communities and what their needs are, and just interesting information in general for the department.
I think part of what's tricky with some of them. So I've been to I've been to every physical building library in the islands except Isle La Motte, and finding a time when they happen to have somebody there is part of the challenge, and connecting with somebody to get the information. And we had, back when the floods happened in 2023, I remember East Burke, they just weren't answering if their library was impacted or not. And it was getting to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to drive out there and look at it. Like, this is getting crazy. It was weeks later before we finally got them on the phone. So there can be libraries that have very few hours and that really are difficult to interact with. And when you look back at the 1986 standards, the minimum standards for public libraries, having a phone was one of the things. Having your hours posted on a sign, that's one of the standards. I think we still have libraries that are not meeting those standards. So it can be very challenging. I think when I get up into the 160 range of public libraries with visits, it's going to be really tough to finish because you kind of have to lay in wait and hope somebody arrives sometimes.
I'm
with
seeing
some
it
of the little ones.
Like I was thinking while you were talking earlier about you're going to all these different libraries. It's like planning in the Adirondacks, doing all 46 peaks. It's and that some are easier to achieve. Maybe or not as high in elevation, but some sites are very remote, and you really have to plan out. And it's just
usually I plan in advance, but there have been a couple that I've seen, like the Albany Public Library. I was driving through one day on a Saturday afternoon, and I thought, wait, the library's open. There's a sign, it says open. And I just peeled off and went in because I was like, how am I going to line up with that little library being open when I happen to be on the road for one of these things? And that's the challenge too. Like, one reason that sometimes I'm visiting a library multiple times might be that they have a meeting room. Like the community library in Manchester has an amazing meeting room. And when we go down to Manchester for Capital for a day, we've used that room, so you can end up seeing the same places a couple of times, but it also depends on like what everybody's open on different days and different hours, so lining it up. But to the real point of the question, I think there is a huge disparity, especially between the smallest and most rural communities and the bigger cities. If you look at the amount per capita that's being spent at libraries in Chittenden County versus, Barton, can sometimes really come down to, is somebody, in a little library, a collection may be good because there's a local benefactor who's donating all of their books after they read them. It's not always, it's not always easy to know what you're going to go into, but sometimes on the library tours, I'll just be struck by the disparity between two libraries that I visited in one afternoon. And for me, I used to visit libraries sometimes by myself, and I prefer to visit them with colleagues now because we kind of mull it over and talk about what we've learned and what we've seen that's similar, and kind of try to kind of like catalog or classify the libraries and what their needs might be. Is sort of, it's a process that I hope helps us to support libraries more.
And then us as board members having the opportunity for a couple of site visits, and that was great. And hopefully we can do that again, to see some of that. So as a concluding note, I'm happy to show anybody here on the board or the department where some of these documents are, all the exhibits and supporting materials. Everything is a public record. And so if anyone wanted to dive in, happy to hop on Teams and do that and walk someone through that.
Thank you, Adrienne.
Yeah, you're welcome.
By sharing those documents, would that be akin to having a meeting? Like if you just shared it with 2 or 3, can it be posted on the website or anything?
I think what I could do is send it to Kathy and she could distribute the link maybe to the pre-applications, or I don't know.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
think that if
Kathy?
you shared it with me, Adrienne, and then I share the document out, but I put you all in the blind carbon copy field so that you can all see the documents, but you're not talking to each other about them, then that would not, I do not believe that would constitute a meeting. I think that would be okay.
Yeah, I think
They're
you're
really
right.
fascinating. Yeah, I've really enjoyed the last couple of days ever since they've been shared with our organization. They're just fascinating, like about recreation areas and resources and infrastructure and libraries.
Adrienne, depending on how many links there are, if it's say like 11 links, we could also agree to include them in the minutes. That way anybody who's watching could be, like anybody who's gotten to this point of the meeting on the video and is interested or sees the topic in the agenda, as we post the amended agenda, that they could benefit from the links too. If it's like hundreds of links, that would be harder. But I think if you can kind of coordinate the list of links and share it with me and Jess, that would be something, if that's okay with our board chair.
Instructions. Instructions or like very quickly, like how you get to the database and you just put in this input. There are 2 plans that are in pre-application stages right now, so they're staggered, all 11. So the other ones are coming, but I could maybe guide or provide the links. Sometimes the links to the applications themselves may be temporary versus like a permanent link. So I would look for something that would stand the test of time for the public records, and I can work on that separately. And then maybe we can work with Jess and you and figure out like what's best for the minutes, so that people can see. And that might be best to have that reflected in the minutes, or it could be an email sent out to the board members as you outlined with the blind carbon copy.
Yeah, Tom here. I always push, remember, board members, we're ambassadors to the library. So we're the regional voices out there too. So to remember, and so it would be good if people in the different region know which is the regional meeting, the group in their region. And just
maybe a map to the link
check up
to
on it.
11 names. So Addison or
So you,
or wherever. Yeah.
so you know what's happening in your region, might not even know that that's going on. And thank you for saying that libraries are a part of that and should be a part of that. I have one
Absolutely.
question, Kathy. Logistics. Uh, since I know, right? So you people have applied to be on the board, right? And then it was Willow down, I assume. How many applications did you get? Anyway, I'm just curious.
I think we had 5 applications, and where it is right now is that I've given recommendations to the governor's office, but I'm not sure
Yep.
when they'll decide or what they'll decide.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
So that
you
takes a
give
while.
right. So yeah, that gives recommendations. And just to bring it up, hate to bring it up, but who else needs to go off served for, because you can serve a maximum by law 2 4-year terms, or you serve until your replacement is. So I assume that somebody else was probably going off in January. And
I
uh,
have to look. I think that, hold on a second. I've got a spreadsheet, so hold on for 1 second.
I'm seeing 2027, February of 2027.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
That's just talking. I think that, yeah, we don't have anybody expired whose term is expiring in 2026. So we have a
that's
little
fantastic.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so everybody is on. Hey, you're on for the duration, folks. Yeah, that's remember that.
So are you till we
that-
have a
that's
replacement, Tom.
Yep, and I am until the replacement. Yep, that's why I came on. But I just wanted to see that. So I tell people it's very important on the board. Remember, you are the sort of almost the eyes and ears, because this part is just advisory to the state librarian. And if you hear anybody saying, you know, I don't like the name of that stream, or what's the name of that stream? There isn't one. Remember, that is the board's responsibility, and they can apply to do that online as well.
Right.
And we
Kathy,
haven't
did you
had
want
any for about a year or two. Sorry. And that's
No,
it.
we
Okay.
haven't. That's right. Kathy, did you want to talk about changing the schedule for these board meetings? Maybe you could suggest to us some other quarterly dates based on what your schedule is, because I'm aware that how difficult it must be to try to be doing 5 different important things at once. So,
yeah, maybe that's something we can talk about at the next meeting, but I think if we just shifted by 1 month, it would help a fair amount, because then we would be February, what would we be? February, May, August, November. So that would make it so that Jess and I aren't doing closeout activities for the end of the fiscal year. At the same time, we're prepping the meeting, and it would also get the meeting a little bit further from the 4th of July, which often has it sneaking up on all of us. And then there's sometimes that our federal reports are due on the 31st of December. So that's right before the January meeting as well. So if you're, for the next meeting, if you'd like, I can put something together, with specific dates. I'm seeing Jennifer nodding.
I think that's a great idea.
And maybe we want to meet in February instead of January. Why don't we just start?
Yeah,
we could do that.
That would be helpful.
I need to check on how we can do it, though. Like, I think because it wasn't warned, we probably can't change I think that we probably need to actually talk about it, so we could plan on, I'm just thinking we could do a special meeting in February.
Well, but we'd be meeting in January anyway, right?
Yeah, we could cancel the January regular meeting and plan a special meeting in February.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. We could do that.
And I'll say the problem with quarterly, say For example, if you're on nonprofits, I have quarterly meeting for this on the second Tuesday. Vermont Association of Blind has its quarterly meeting. Everybody has their quarterly meeting starting in January. So so the quarters, the months are really problematic, and it would be better to get off of that. And I think everybody would have an easier chance of
Yeah, if we met the
of
second month
attending
of
the
each
meeting.
quarter.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think that that's something that we can actually talk about. We can talk about meeting agendas and scheduling things in an
Yeah.
email. So why don't I
Right.
send out something and then you'll each reply to me, and then the administrative wing of us, me and Jess, will sort that out with Lisa and Adrian to make that change.
That
Sounds
sounds
great.
good.
And we just have to
Yeah.
keep that conversation just to that topic, because we're allowed to talk about scheduling, so.
Mhm. Thanks for bringing
But
that
if
up,
we're
Linda.
going to change the recurring meeting and not just that one meeting, I think we would want to bring something to the next meeting to officially change that.
Okay. Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
This is like an ask and you shall receive moment. I just mentioned that off the cuff and you all just make it happen, make it so.
Make it so.
Just trying to help you out, Kathy.
Thank you, Linda.
Beam me up, Kathy. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not trying to move things forward too quickly, but it seems like we're out of topics. So unless somebody disagrees, I could
I move we adjourn.
got a second?
I'll second.
All
Yeah.
right. All in
Non-debatable
favor?
motion.
Yeah.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. We are adjourned at 11:48.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, everybody.
Thank you,
Great.
everyone.
Have a nice
Thank
day.
you all.
Okay. And I may or may not see you in